Hear me?
Okay, 7 o'clock, I call the meeting to order. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the
and the
United States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which
which stands
stands
one
one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Kim.
Pro Tem Jackson. Trustee Benson.
Here.
Trustee Pelfrey.
Here.
Trustee Gunther.
Here.
Trustee Mead.
Present.
Trustee Varan. President Alwar.
Here. Thanks, Kim. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Any public comments? If there is any
Okay,
public comments, we have 3 minutes for the public comments.
I do see we have a couple here. Don,
Okay. Go ahead.
yep, hold on. Don, you got anything for us? You're on, I unmuted it, or I allowed you to talk there, but I think you got to unmute it.
Okay. Don, are you there? Did we lose Don? Did we lose Don?
I am not sure here. I think, okay, now I see him. Are you there, Don?
Yes, I am. I want to thank you for the invite to come to share with your meeting. You've got a lot of challenges, and it's a big challenge when you have the Zoom meetings, and I'm glad to see your participation. That's all I have. Thank you. Be
Thank you,
healthy.
Don. Okay.
Right,
Anyone
and we
else?
have another one here. All right. Mark, can you hear me there? I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Who's this? Who?
My name is Mark Pelfrey.
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
With respect to the Planning Commission appointment that you will discuss during the new business section this evening, I would encourage President Alwar and the rest of the Village Council to cast a wider net in order to seek out members of the community that are interested in serving in that role. In recent months, much has been said by this body and by Manager Newton about trying to more actively encourage members of the community to get involved in local government. And this seems like a really good way to request letters of intent to serve on the Planning Commission and to make the decision from there. As it stands, we have no idea how nominations to this board are made or what qualifications that any potential member of the Planning Commission might have. Asking for members to submit these letters of intent would show the community that this body is committed to transparency and gives the council information about the people they're being asked to approve for positions. On a personal note, I had interactions with Ms. Patner during our sewage event that transpired over the summer. She was unwilling to truly hear our concerns is one issue that I would have with that nomination, despite being the only village trustee that did get back with us about the situation. She was kind of angry about having videotape meetings, and the Open Meetings Act indicates that that is an appropriate thing to be doing. And in fact, spent time in a public meeting of this very body discouraging the insurance that I carry on my home. So in my personal experience, I would just encourage the village to really reach outside of the normal cast of characters and encourage participation by members of the community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Anyone else, Matt? Anybody else?
Nope.
All right. The next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Any additions, deletions to the agenda?
Nothing from me.
Okay, if there's no additions or deletions to the agenda, I need approval of the agenda as presented. Minutes from the November 9th regular meeting and bills on a total of $189,942.52. I need a motion for that consent agenda.
A
motion to approve.
Trustee Mead, I need a second.
I'll second.
Trustee Jackson, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, motion carries. Next item is correspondence. We have nothing under correspondence, so we go to the,
Yeah, we do.
we do?
Yep.
I don't see any. Oh, I don't see anything on the agenda for that, so.
Yeah, I guess I forgot to put the A and B on there of those items.
Okay,
Do you
that's
want me
why-
to read these?
I mean, go ahead, if you wanna, give us summaries and letters.
Okay, I guess I can provide a summary for it. So,
Mhm.
the first letter is from the resident at 125 Veterans Memorial Drive. Now, both of these letters essentially are about the same sort of topic, but in a little different context. So, with this first one, basically, their concern was the charge for the readiness to serve fees, so the water base and sewer base. With this particular residence, it had a 1-inch meter when the new rates went into effect. And with the way that the rate structure is set up, the base rate is established on a 3/4 inch rate factor, essentially. So 5/8 and 3/4 counts as the same. And then as you increase in size, the base rate increases those readiness to serve fees. So in essence, it ends up being about 60% higher in terms of those readiness to serve fees. So it can be about $9 to $10 higher for those readiness to serve fees. So we talked about this a couple months ago, and basically what we had done at that point in time was to allow for residents that had a 1-inch meter to downsize that meter to a 3/4 inch meter if they wanted to do so. So this particular resident did do that, and then followed back up with me a couple weeks later and indicated that there were some noticeable, issues with respect to the flow of water. So for example, if they were running the bathtub and, running the sink and, using water from multiple sources, they could notice that the flow of water seemed to be a little bit more reduced versus what they had with the 1-inch meter size. So they requested that we consider giving them the 1-inch meter back for use, but only charging the base fee for that's equivalent to a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. And essentially with this one, I think that's kind of where we're at, is that they would want to see that there's about 17 residences overall that would have a 1-inch meter. In terms of feedback, we did hear from these residents. I think we had one other resident that called about this matter as well. We'll get into this a little bit later when there's a whole item where we're going to talk about the readiness to serve fees. But in summary, that's kind of what it is they have a 3/4 inch meter now that they had moved to, and they're wanting to go back to the 1-inch meter, but pay the same rate as they're currently being assessed for the smaller size meter. And I guess the last thing I'll mention with this is that, there's a lot of factors that go into it in terms of the size of the service lines, the length of those service runs, etc. So there are instances where, a 1-inch meter might actually work better based on how long of a line the water's running, or a couple different things with respect to, say, number of bathrooms, the home. I mean, so it's going to be unique kind of for each situation as to what might work and what wouldn't. With the second letter, this one is from Ms. Pasley. And in summary, Dortha was talking here about how she had purchased a home that needed to be renovated. So the interior had been destroyed. There were some holes in roofs, and that there was essentially a process that goes into that. So they had to re-roof the building so that they were able to, kind of button up the inside and make sure that it wasn't exposed to the elements. then work on obviously the plaster, drywall, et cetera, on the inside of the building, painting, trim, et cetera. And then they're able to turn on the heat after that. Obviously, you can't turn water on in an instance where you don't have heat, because you have the potential for pipes to freeze. So if you're not able to turn on heat because of holes in roofs or something, that can create a real issue. So what she had done was water had been turned off at the residence while she was completing those repairs. Now, the way that the new rate structure works is that those readiness to serve fees, so water base and sewer base on the bills, those get assessed whether a residence would have service turned on or turned off. The reason for that is that, again, I'll get a little more into this as we get into the agenda item, but long story short, the readiness to serve fees are based on the fixed costs of the village. So those would be the cost of ongoing maintenance, work that we're going to incur regardless of whether we're doing certain projects or anything. I mean, so when we figured these out, we took all of the projects we might be working on over the next couple of years and kind of remove those. So it's basically just the base maintenance costs and preventative maintenance type fees that are assessed as far as those readiness to serve fees go. What Dorotha, I believe, is requesting here is that with the policy that's in place, she would like to see that changed in essence, that if there's ongoing work that's being done or renovations, etc., that those readiness to serve fees not be assessed while that work is being completed, particularly in the case of a major rehab or something along those lines where, there's a lot of major work that's taking place.
Any questions about these two letters from the council members? There's no questions or any discussions. I'll move to officers' report. Any questions from the council members about the officers' report, which is a village attorney report, DPW report, chief of police report, clerk treasurer report, and village manager's report? Any questions about in regard to these reports? Anyone from the council have any questions about these reports? Okay. Matt, you want to talk about a little bit about your report, please?
Yeah, I got a couple things. First and foremost, obviously COVID-19 continues to be a challenge. I look forward to the day where we don't have to talk about COVID-19 anymore, but obviously right now it's still a major concern that's impacting all of the nation really, but our state and our region specifically pretty hard. As we had updated earlier this month, we did have the MDHHS issue an epidemic order on the 18th that required any work that could be done remotely to be done that way. So we had adopted, a new plan to accommodate that. That was actually set to run through December 8th, so through tomorrow. As of, I think it was about 3 o'clock today, they have extended that order to run an additional 12 days. So that would run through December 20th. So the plan right now would be to continue our current policies and procedures, at least through that date. And then we'll wait for additional guidance from MDHHS. I do have included in the packet a COVID response plan. I would like to note that with this particular plan, we had utilized some inspiration from the city of Otsego. You guys remember, obviously, Aaron Mitchell is at Otsego. So they had a great plan in place. And we took that and adopted a few different elements and made a few different tweaks to kind of fit the village. And it basically outlines a lot of what how we would handle the situation, the current, or outlines kind of the current protections in place, how we would handle a positive case, how quarantines work, when an employee can return back to work, how employee leave works. So, I know we sent that out some time ago for everybody to look at, but I did include it here in the packet. And again, that That was actually a document that was adapted from the city of Otsego. The fiscal year 22 budget process is underway. We were planning to meet with the budget committee this Friday. We still have some challenges that are out there in terms of specifically revenue sharing from the state as well as Act 51 funding. With some of those, it's difficult to project what the outcome is going to be. Act 51 funding, which is our roads, actually has a component that would be based in part on gas taxes. So with the fact that these stay-at-home orders and certain sectors of the economy working remotely, there's less traffic that's taking place, a lot less travel that's occurring. So that's impacting the state budget from that perspective. And so there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what that means to local communities. So if the state brings in less revenues that would normally go back out via Act 51, that could result then in Decatur earning a reduced revenue amount than what we were used to. And then revenue sharing is also one of those components where income tax from the state is plays a big factor in that formula. So with the fact that again that COVID-19 is impacting a lot of different sectors of the economy, there's a lot of question as to what the impact is going to be on income tax and the other elements that make up revenue sharing. So we're doing our best to try to estimate those things as conservatively as possible. But yeah, I think even the state would tell you that right now there's just not a way to know exactly what that metric is going to be and what's going to ultimately be the numbers we have to work with. So, we're doing our best to try to be conservative there. And we're also taking that same track with respect to property taxes. Typically what we do is would look at last year's tax ratios and for personal property and property taxes, and then kind of base that on did we see any new construction that took place? Was there any noticeable renovations or improvements that took place, and how do we expect that to to impact property tax revenues? For this next year, our plan is more than likely going to be to, at a minimum, simply keep the existing tax revenues forecasted in the budget and not forecast any increases. It's possible, again, that may fluctuate a little bit as well. But again, when you're in the middle of a situation like this, it's one of those things where there's just not an easy way to know in advance how that's going to play out. I think we do have some optimism though as well. We obviously can't forecast with full confidence the items I mentioned above, but one thing that I do take some solace in is that there is a healthy fund balance across most of our funds. As you saw from the clerk's report, right now the village has roughly 3.6 million across all of our funds. Our general fund balance right now is actually about $40,000 higher than what it was at this same point last year. And we anticipate additional revenues coming in from the sale of the old high school, as well as some more revenue sharing and things like that. So I think we're in a pretty good position. I think for us, the CD that we took out last year has been a big help as well. We've had interest revenues that have been pretty substantial. I think over the course of the last couple of years, we're talking $13,000 to $15,000 of extra revenue. So that money that was basically just sitting there in reserve got put to work, and so we've been fortunate that I think between all of the different policies and procedures we've had in place with respect to fiscal management, we've done a really good job of ensuring that if a situation like this came up, we would have enough in the rainy day fund to be able to weather this at least for a decent length of time. I know that at the start of this year, we had roughly 80.5% of expected expenses were covered by our existing fund balance. So, we're in a good place. I mean, it's hard to say how long COVID is going to be a factor, but I think right now, at least, I don't anticipate, having a major impact on, our fund balance to a point where we're getting down to say, 30% or 40% or something, so I think we're still in a good spot. And then So this Friday, we'll be meeting with the budget committee to go over kind of some of the early components and some draft items, and then we'll be meeting towards the end of the month to kind of go over kind of a final draft budget that we'll present to the council in January, and then we'll formally adopt that in February. Obviously, we're coming up on the holiday season, so I'd like to first, I guess, wish everybody a happy holiday if I don't see you. One thing that I've been debating, we'll probably put this on an agenda for, say, January or February, but we do have some additional funds that were appropriated for our parks department. One was fireworks, and then another one was some capital improvements. I think we do have some remaining funds left over. So one thing we could look at is, we talked last year about the idea of expanding some of our Christmas displays. So maybe some ground elements, or I think it'd be kind of cool to have a large tree where we could do like a tree lighting ceremony indicator and coordinate that with the library's normal events. I mean, obviously we can't do that during the COVID situation, but hopefully by next year we'll be in a better spot. So what we can actually sometimes see is that when you get to January, February, March, a lot of those Christmas vendors will have some pretty deep discounts on things. So, we'll continue to explore whether there could be some options there and bring that back to you guys. We're going to be working on the uniform chart of accounts update shortly. So basically all of our GL numbers are predicated by a chart of accounts the state establishes. They've made some changes there. So Kim and I and BSNA and maybe even our auditors are going to have to work to implement some changes. So it might be that, for example, village manager's salary might be 172,703. The new account might have to actually be a different number. So there's going to be a process we walk through with BSNA to update those and make those changes so that we're in compliance with what the state requires. So I think that process will start roughly about in April. It shouldn't have too much of an impact on the budget, since basically we're just changing the numbers to match the chart of accounts, but it'll be a bit of a project, and Kim and I will have quite a bit of time that we have to invest in that process and working with BSNA and everybody to make that work. With the DPW, I did want to announce that we did have a new employee start today, Gordy Myers. He joined us with some prior experience from Pawpaw. He has about 20 years of public works experience. We're really excited to have him joining our team. And then I had a couple interviews last week, and we're doing a couple more this week and trying to find the last person to fill the open position we have with Public Works now. I would anticipate we have an offer ready by the end of this week, and hopefully would have that person starting within the next 7 days to 2 weeks at most. So I think we'll be at full strength here by the middle of the month. Kim and I completed our 2020 CVTRS document. So we've submitted everything to the state that we're required to do for revenue sharing. And then those documents have also been posted to the financial transparency section of the website. So I would like to thank Kim for all her hard work on that. And we're good to go in terms of being compliant with what's required there. One thing that I guess I wanted to mention with respect to wages, we talked about this in the springtime last year, and I don't know if we want to look to try to incorporate that into the budget for this year, but we haven't done a wage and salary survey for all all village positions in quite some time. One thing that's come up, especially as we've looked to hire DPW employees, is that we have a scale, but it's basically, a starting wage is this amount. These certifications are equal to this amount, but it doesn't really take into account things like experience. So we've run into a few situations where if we interview somebody that has, say, for example, 5 years or 10 years of experience in public works, and somebody that is actually doesn't have any prior experience, there may be instances where having a range of pay could be helpful, so that we'd be able to look at each case individually and say, what do we think is the best option here? Does this particular experience level or something along those lines, is there a justification for saying, okay, we would start this person at this rate as opposed to, the base rate that you might see for somebody that doesn't have that same level of experience? The other thing that having these sort of scales does is that it sets upper and lower limits for all the positions the village would have. So whether we're talking about the chief of police or the public works foreman, village manager, etc., we could identify, okay, well, this is going to be on the lower end, this is going to be on the upper end. And then as we start to talk about looking at moving to more performance-based options, that gives us some flexibility to say, well, depending on how that performance is, this is what we could work within the budget, and these are the rates that would be applicable for that position. So it's just something to think about. I know that last time we did this, or when I looked at the cost, there's sometimes about an $8,000 cost that can go into it, but I think it's important for us to not annually, but to periodically look and see, are we competitive with communities around us? Are we doing what's necessary to retain good staff members and attract new staff members that would be of a high quality? So I'm looking to either get that into the budget for this year, or to potentially with some of the challenges we're looking at next year, the fiscal year 23 budget, but that's coming down the line, and I just wanted to touch on that with you guys. And then finally, I want to welcome our new trustees to the council, Janice and Jessica. Both were sworn in earlier this month, and in the coming weeks, we're going to work on getting photos, bios, and questionnaires completed so we can get those onto the website. I do obviously look forward to working with both of you. If there's one thing I've learned in my time with the village though so far, it's that everybody brings a unique perspective. So when we're looking at different projects and issues and challenges, it's fantastic to hear from everybody and see everybody's viewpoint. And I think that, a fresh perspective is helpful. And I look forward to working with all of our council on making improvements to our community and continuing to strive to make our community the best that we can. And then the other thing I guess I'll touch on is that I am looking at trying to reach out to a couple of our existing council members to get photos that we might need for the website. And then that bio option we have, where we basically kind of a brief background, visions for the village, etc. There's a few current council members where we don't have that, and I'd like to see that get added. So we have kind of a full page there. And then we are going to be looking at adding email addresses in one form or another. We would either put our general email, so we have an email group for the council where somebody could email the entire group, or we could list individual email addresses as well. I think the group option might be the best way to go. So that way, if somebody does choose to email the council, everybody is receiving it. So I'm going to work on getting that change made shortly. And that is all I have.
Yeah, I got a question about the COVID-19, like working from home,
Yes.
You said 12 extended to the December 18th. Is that what you said?
It was extended through December 20th.
20th.
Yep. So
Okay.
12,
After this,
12 days.
I would like to see is we continue with the like if you want to dealing with public using appointments dealing with the public.
Yes.
But after the 20th, maybe try to figure out you and Kim could work from the office. You just maintain social distancing and masks and all that stuff after the 20th.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
I just want to, but to continue with the appointment, any dealing with the public, you need to have an appointment to deal with you guys.
Yeah.
We could talk about it some more.
Sure. I think just with us, we're doing everything we can to comply with the MDHHS. Essentially what they have in place is that if work can be done remotely, you have to. And if we don't do that, there could be a fine involved. And so, and we are still here.
We'll talk about it some more, you and I.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. CMF overlay Harrison Street.
Yeah. So we talked about this last month, and basically the Harrison Street property, it is I've heard a lot of people refer to it as the old Burkett Sawmill. That property is up for sale right now, and we've had one primary interested party contact us to ask about the potential for it to become a MRTMA or MMFLA grow facility. Now, when we talked about it last month, the council requested that the Planning Commission review the proposal and provide some sort of a recommendation on how they viewed it. So this past Thursday, or excuse me, this past I think it was Thursday. Yeah, we did hold a Planning Commission meeting and reviewed of the items reviewed. This was one of them. So we held a discussion on that, talked about, in particular, one of the items, and we talked about this at the last meeting as well, was the proximity to the Head Start facility that's right across the street. So we did also talk about possible job creation components, the licensing fees that the village would receive for that, and whatever building requirements might be there where this could be, was there any options where this might be, viable? So we had a bit of a spirited discussion, and after doing that, the Planning Commission recommended that the CMF overlay be amended to include this property. However, they wanted restrictions included. So basically, the way they looked at it is that with that being across the street from the Head Start, they wanted to see that this only be permitted if it's a fully indoor operation. So unlike some of the other operations there where you could see greenhouses that are erected, I mean, there's obviously still requirements with greenhouses where they have to abide by, odor control concerns, fencing, etc. But with this, the Planning Commission had said specifically the only way they felt it was viable was with it if it was like completely indoor, so like a warehouse type setup. That way there's nothing that's visible, and you can ensure industrial filtration and things along those lines. They also
Good.
wanted to see a fence constructed around the perimeter of the facility, and that obviously necessary security safeguards were in place. So obviously,
Any questions from the council?
yeah. Any questions?
Any questions from the councils in regard to this facility? Any opinions? Any discussions? If there is no discussions, I like to take the recommendation of the planning commission to, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve this for the facility, if they have, making sure it's indoors, and as long as it meets the criteria of the planning commission, I need a motion to approve the facility or disapprove the facility, one of the two.
Yes.
Anybody wants to make a motion? Anyone out there? Any idea?
I want to make a motion not to amend the OMF overlay.
Okay. Okay, I need a second. Okay, I'm sorry.
I believe
Okay.
that was Kim.
All right. We'll come second. Okay, let's go roll call on this, please. For not to have this facility for CMF, including a CMF.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Benson,
Yes.
Trustee Pelfrey, she's not. Trustee Gunther, Trustee Mead,
Yes.
Trustee Varian, President Awar,
This is yes for not to agree with the establishment of the CMF.
Yeah, and I think I do see Jessica's microphone is active. So if we could go back to Jessica.
Trustee Pelfrey.
No.
You want to not, or you,
I would. We're voting to not amend it, correct?
correct?
I would vote against that.
Okay,
So everybody's against the
Right?
amendment.
I forgot.
Is that what it? So it's all in favor then not to proceed. That's what it is. Is that true?
yes.
Yeah, be 5-1 to not proceed. Yes.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is new business, which is planning commission appointment. Okay,
Yep. So we've had a few items that we need to complete concerning the planning commission. First, we have a couple of members that have been on the planning commission for a while with terms that are expiring. With these, we typically stagger those, so they would expire in different years. So as such, based on prior terms of office, our normal appointment schedule, if we were to approve that, would be Blaine Rex's term would be a new term expiring June 2023, and Janet Molart would be a term expiring June 2022. The Planning Commission itself is composed of 5 members. The village manager serves as a permanent voting member through the term of that manager's employment. 1 member from the council whose term is through their term of office, which is currently Trustee Varan, and then 3 members at large. So the member that we need to appoint would be an at-large member from the community. Now, all appointments would be up to the discretion of the village president. Ali and I had talked about this a couple different times, and he had chosen to appoint Cindy Packner, pursuant to approval by the council. As you guys obviously know, Cindy had served on the council for the last 4 years and does have a good understanding of the various responsibilities and roles of the Planning Commission. I did speak with her about this, and she did mention that, if the village council did approve her, she would be happy to accept the role. So as such, in compliance with the appointment schedule, if the village council were to approve the appointments as presented here, Cindy Packner would be a term that would expire also in June of 2022. So then with future appointments, now that we've got these all squared away properly, when those appointments would expire, we'd be doing 3-year terms for each of those. So in the case of a vacated seat, we would actually have that just be for the current duration of the term that's being filled. Obviously, we've been without a planning commission member, the 5th member, for I think it's been close to about 7-8 months now, and there's been a number of decisions, obviously, like the one that we just discussed, where having a full commission is really a helpful thing in terms of being able to review items that come up and provide valuable feedback to the council in terms of recommendations and things that are going to be discussed during deliberations of the council.
Any discussions from the council? There is no discussions. I need a motion to approve the planning commission members as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the planning commission members as presented.
All right. Need a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Mead, Trustee Jackson, roll call, please. Kim? I can't hear you. Hello?
Sorry, Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Benson,
Yes.
Trustee Pelfrey,
Yes,
Trustee Gunther, Trustee Mead,
Yes.
Trustee Varan, President Hour.
Yes. Did you get Trustee Gunther by any chance?
Did not hear her.
It was a yes. Yeah, I'm here at the office with
Okay.
her. It was yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so all in favor, motion carries. The next item on the agenda, water rates.
Yeah, so this is one of the big ones here for tonight's meeting. Obviously, with the correspondence that was sent, we had 2 instances where community members were requesting clarifications from the council as to how these would be determined going forward. So again, as I talked about initially, both concerns revolve around the readiness to serve fees, although in a little bit different way. So essentially, with the readiness to serve fees, as I talked about before, those are charged to any existing service connection. So if there's any home or property that has a line, a water tap or a sewer tap with a line that runs to a home or a building, they're assessed that readiness to serve fee. In the new rate structure, it's regardless of whether somebody would have services turned on or off. So if somebody decides to, for example, go on vacation, they can turn off the usage component, but that readiness to serve fee essentially still gets charged. So the reason for that is that the ready-to-serve fees are designed to cover the fixed costs of the village's water system. So fixed costs are just that. They're those items that are required to operate and maintain the system and things that we can't control. So for example, the electricity that the pumps use to pump the water around the village, maintenance requirements for the water tower or water lines, um, wages and salaries for the public works employees that maintain the system. So when Baker Tilly, the financial firm we worked with, looked at this, what they did is they took out any kind of discretionary projects. So whether we're talking about capital improvements, Cedar Street, whatever, with any of those projects, they took those projects out and said, okay, what is the base cost that we have to pay just to cover the normal maintenance operations for both water and sewer. And then with those readiness to serve fees, those were factored based on the size of the meter, and then were structured in such a way to cover just those fixed costs. Now I understand this is a change from what we had done previously. Before, if water services were turned off, those readiness to serve fees were not assessed. So I certainly understand that where the frustration is coming from with some of this. It's a change, and it's not what we've done before. It's all part of the new rate structure. However, in practice, communities that have updated their rates in the recent past now do follow this same model. So I reached out to some local communities, Pawpaw, Lawton, and Lawrence, and asked about this very premise, and all of them indicated that they charge ready-to-serve fees in the same way that we do. I also reached out to other village and city managers around the state. I got about 20 responses back. In all of the cases, the same structure that we have in place was utilized. When I completed the outreach on this, I didn't have a single community that responded back to me that said, no, we make this allowance, or we have this system in place to address that. In fact, in most cases, there were people that responded back and said that, not only is it to each active residence or business, but even in cases where a home is demolished or there's vacant land that used to be a house or a business where there's a service connection, if that's just capped and they didn't abandon it at the tap, they still charge a readiness to serve fee on those properties as well. Now, for us, ours has just been active connections to existing structures. We haven't charged vacant lands or things along those lines. So in many ways, one of the simplest ways to look at this is relating it to taxes in a way. So, if a resident vacates a home to go on an extended vacation or working on renovations, the taxes that are due aren't adjusted to accommodate that. In most cases, it's simply the cost associated with owning the property, or in the case of the water and sewer system, the cost of having a connection, whether it's in use or not. We still have to incur all the fixed costs to maintain and operate the system, as well as the reserved capacity for that home or business that is on the water main as well. One of the things that comes up is that if you do this for one party, you have to establish criteria for how you manage this, and more than likely what it would mean is that if you're going to offset those RT, or you're going to reduce those ready to serve fees in a manner like this, you probably have to accommodate that in some way. So that would probably mean raising the overall readiness to serve fee on all customers. So in essence, one way to look at it is that all customers would be subsidizing those particular cases. So it's hard to justify how a change could take place. I mean, I looked at a number of different ways to try to figure out if there's any justification for doing it, and reached out to several other communities to try to find an example of where this was done, and talked to the Baker Tilly about it. And in all cases, I really couldn't find a good example where anybody had said this is how we should do it differently. Most instances, this is how it's done. I know, again, it's a change, but it's what they said needed to be done in order to maintain the system that we have and provide for the ongoing maintenance costs that come into it. Now, with
Yeah.
respect to the 1-inch meter size, that question, our current rate structure is pretty clear on this, and we've discussed this before, but the rate structure is a factoring table based on the size of a water meter. So, you know, at the 5/8 and 3/4 meters are a 1.0 rate factor, and then it goes up to 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1.5, 2, 3, etc. And the factoring table is based on the water volume and capacity that those meters would have versus the base meters. And then the readiness to serve fee is then calculated based on the size of that meter. Now, to date, we've only changed one meter, and it was for the residents that was mentioned in the letter. However, they did mention that they could see noticeable reductions in water volume and flow. I can understand where the frustration would come here, but we have it set now where the size of the water meter is what determines that base rate. We don't construct service connections. We don't select water meter sizes. It's going to be unique depending on each home and each business, each user essentially, and to what their needs might be, whether a larger meter is required or not. While that particular residence may not be substantially different from the surrounding properties in terms of number of bathrooms, et cetera, irrigation, what have you, the fact remains that the capacity of a 1-inch meter is higher, and we have to account for the fact that potential capacity or potential usage at that residence could be higher than what you would see at other properties. So again, with this one, I talked with Baker Tilly, and I don't know that there's a good path to make any sort of adjustments here too. You can't just essentially change residential customers that are in that category. So you couldn't say, well, 1-inch meters, but just the residential side, because you couldn't make the justification that a commercial user at a 1-inch size is substantially different from a residential customer in terms of the way that water is used or how it's being used, or the amount of water being used. And then it's not just as simple as changing the 1-inch to match those either. If you're going to use a rate factor table, you actually have to refactor the whole table. So if you set 1 inch as the base rate, then that's going to impact all the rate factors for the larger size meters. So your 1 1/4, your 2, 3, 4, 6, etc. All those meters then get refactored based on the 1-inch size. And then more than likely what happens is that we then have to readjust all of those fees to account for that change. So we'd essentially have to kind of go back to the drawing board and start over again. At the end of the day, we do have the option for the 3/4 inch meters to be retained, but the only way that I can see that going forward, for at least from what Baker Tilly told me, was to look at refactoring the whole table. Now we're talking about 17 residences altogether here, and I'm not trying to minimize the impact that they have seen, but we do have roughly 763 total accounts. So
Let me hear from the council what they think about this. I need to hear from the council members what they think about this too.
Okay, and we do have Mickey is on the call as well too. So if anybody has anything a little more technical, Mickey could answer some stuff too.
So on the first one where the customer had the 1-inch, we reduced it so they could have the smaller fee.
Yeah.
And now they don't like their water flow. If they want to go back to 1-inch, I think they have to pay for 1-inch. Otherwise, they have to deal with the reduced flow because that was the whole purpose.
Yes. Okay.
I also have a comment. The residential industry standards at this point for new homes being built is 1 inch right now. But a lot of it depends on the communities that these homes are being built in. A lot of them, when they're being built, if everything in the standard is a 3/4 inch, you have that option as the homeowner to go larger if you choose, or stick with the standard, which is what the majority has. Decatur seems to be, it's an older, community. Homes have been here a really long time, and that standard is pretty much a 3/4. Even though I understand the resident and their, concerns with this and the increase in rates. I think that with 17 individuals or 17 homes that are affected, I don't know if that could justify changing that or grandfathering them in for a lower rate. I don't know if that could be justified. I don't know if that's something that could be done if you grandfather them in, and then if the house sells, there's no discussion. This is the rate. But at this point, since we're dealing with, again, like Matt was saying, I know it's 17 individual homes, but I just don't think that justifies the change of the total of 763 residents.
I agree with both of you. Is this Janice talking?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I agree with you, Trustee Jackson, Trustee Benson. I think we already set the rates, and I don't want to go back and forth. And we already set the study. We already established the process, just like anything else that goes with anything else we deal with in life. Cable, phone, whatever it is. I mean, we have to we stick with what we decide what to do, and I think we should just stay with what we decide on doing, and we just keep everything the way. I mean, I agree with both the council members. Any other discussions? So, Matt, what do you want from us?
Yeah, and I would note that the option to move to a 3/4 inch meter, at least to try it out. I mean, we would be flexible here. If somebody says, hey, I have a 1 inch and I think a 3/4 might work, and I want to see the lower rate, I mean, we would be happy to do that. And then if it doesn't,
we already know
yeah.
that. Matt. We
So I
already
mean,
discussed
that stays the same. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody's on the right track here. Now, basically, what we would do is, if there isn't any changes that are requested, I think it would probably be beneficial for somebody to make a motion to just reaffirm the existing rate structure we have.
Okay.
That way we can say that, this was actually voted on, and the council determined we're going to stick with this, so that
We're gonna stick with the policy. Okay. Okay, I need a motion then to leave it the way it is. Well, what's the motion gonna say, Matt? I can't see the.
basically the,
Can you
I'm
scroll
sorry.
through the thing?
Let
I
me
can't
scroll
see.
down. Yep. So basically the motion would be to reaffirm our existing water and sewer rate structure.
Okay, this,
I move to affirm the existing water and sewer rate structure.
okay, this is Trustee Benson?
Yes, it
I need
is.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Trustee Benson, Trustee Jackson, all in favor, say aye. Aye,
I,
oppose? So motion carries.
I think there
Alright,
was one opposition, Kim. Just so you
okay.
know.
Okay, I did not hear that, sorry. Who's, okay, just as long as it's noted, so.
Yes.
So we're like what, 4-1,
Yes.
5-1?
5-1. Yes.
5-1, okay. The second item on the agenda is committee appointments.
Yeah, so with the recent election that is now concluded, we have a few vacancies that we would need to fill concerning the council appointments. Typically, we handle reappointments generally in the January or February timeframe. That usually coincides with the rules of proceedings that we look at, and/or the budget, one of those two items. So in this case, though, I think it would be pertinent to name appointees to the current vacancies now. And we could do it one of two ways. I mean, if the council so chose, we could have these appointments revisited again, in a month or two as we start looking at the budget and to coincide with the rules of proceedings, or they could just stand as is. Right now, we're only about a month or two out. So to summarize, we would need appointments for the safety committee, the council liaison, Parks and Recreation, and the loan committee. Now, with these in particular, the loan committee specifically, we don't have a current council member that is on that. So if we did receive a loan application, say over the next month or two, we wouldn't have a good, avenue in place to be able to do that. So I think it's
Met with trustee, with the trustee Benson interested in that position? You think?
You know, I'm not sure at
I
this.
have, I had something like trustee Benson, say, I have names, down, but I don't know if they want to participate at this time or not. Or here's this, while we table this until next month or so.
We could, I mean, I guess in that
I don't want,
instance,
I don't
if
want, I don't
it,
want to pressure anybody into anything at this time. So, and you get two new council members, and I don't want to, they need to think about it before these things before I say anything.
sure, sure.
I don't. I could deal with that if we need to. I mean, until maybe in the next time.
Okay. Yeah, that would work.
So this way, I don't want to pressure anybody in doing anything at this time. All right.
Okay.
The next item is waste removal out of proposals.
Yeah, so I won't touch on this for too long. Basically, we had renewed our contract with Waste Management about 3 years ago now. Part of the rationale that we had for renewing that contract was that, with the transition from the manager's office from Aaron to myself, we didn't have a long time frame in there to be able to come up with a formal request for bids. And we didn't have anything we had used previously, so we really had to create something new to be able to do this and to try to make sure we touched on everything that would be specific to the village and outline what it is that we want to see from this. So we had signed a short-term renewal with Waste Management, and that comes due, or that contract would expire in August of 2021. So my thinking here is that we want to try to start this process early. And reach out to the other options that are there. I mean, obviously, Waste Management would be given an opportunity to bid as well. But whether we're talking about Best Way or Republic Service, etc., to give them a listing of here's the services that we want, here's what we're looking for, here's our expectation, and then get quotes back from everybody and commitments that, here's the options that we would have for these services, here's what we can do for you guys. And really evaluate those and try and find a good deal for the community that addresses the services in a way that that accommodates what our residents would like to see and what the council would like to see. Obviously, also taking into account pricing as well. So I included for you guys the request for bid that I had worked on. There's an arbitrary date on it right now. I put March 1st, 2021. I don't know for sure if we're going to bid it out that early. But I think one of the things we want to do with this process, just so you guys are aware of where I'm headed with it, is I want to give everybody a chance to be able to have 45 days or so to put a bid in for the village, so they can really think about it, narrow down pricing, and get that squared away. And then one of the things that we would have to work on if there was a change is kind of figuring out that transition from our current provider to the new provider. We would request that any new provider, if it were to change from Waste Management, would actually be available for 2 different meetings where we would hold with the community to allow them to come in, ask questions of any new carrier that might be there, and be available to the public to try to make sure that all the information that they might need is there. In general, too, with this particular RFB, it does actually add a little bit to what our existing services is and outlines a little bit better what our expectations would be, how some of this stuff needs to be taken care of, who's responsible for what records and what reporting. So I think that even if we were to stay with Waste Management, this gives a very detailed overview of what we're going to require to go forward with a new contract. So again, we don't have to approve anything today, but I just wanted you guys to get a chance to review what I'm proposing, and then we'll talk about this more in the next, probably 2 to 3 months as we get ready to actually release this for bids. We'll put it to you guys for a specific vote. But In the meantime, is there any, if you guys got a chance to review that, is there any questions or any feedback anybody might have on the bid or on the draft that I proposed here? If not, then I think we're okay. Ali, are you there? It looks like you're muted.
Matt?
Okay,
You
I
hear me?
got you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, there's something going on. I don't know what it is. Did you have, okay, I go back to the public comments. Any public comments? Matt,
Let me see here.
you hear me?
Any
Because,
public comments?
huh?
I don't see any yet. If
Yeah,
anybody, just to reiterate, if anybody would like to make a public comment, there is a raise hand button that you would push if you're using the web or a computer or smartphone, etc. Or if you're dialing in, you would push *9 on your phone to raise your hand. You can give a couple seconds here and
for
see
some
if
reason,
anybody would like
it's
to.
on, for some reason, it got muted on me for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, no worries.
I did not touch anything.
All right, Ali, I don't see anybody that
Okay,
wishes
if
to
there's
make a
no
public
public
comment at
comments,
this
I would
time.
like to go council comments. I'm gonna go by the list. I'm just looking at the list in front of me. Okay, Trustee Jackson, any comments?
I don't have anything.
I'll just go with Trustee Benson. Any comments?
No additional comments.
Trustee Gunther. No comments? I can't hear. Trustee Mead,
No comments.
Trustee Pelfrey.
No comments.
Varan is absent. Okay, I would, first of all, I thank everyone. I thank all the employees for Police Department, DPW, for their work during these challenging times. And I welcome Trustee Benson and Trustee Pelfrey to the council. And that's all I have. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Trustee Mead, I need a second.
I'll second.
Trustee Benson, is that what it is?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't tell sometimes. Okay,
That's
all in favor,
okay.
say aye.
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 Oppose, motion carries. Good, the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.